Hello and welcome to today's video, which is going to be ranking my Natasha Denona palettes. I have 8 Natasha Denona palettes and I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my most favorite. I really do love the Natasha Denona formula, but I don't think all of her palettes are, as perfect as I would expect them to be for the very, very high price tag. I do really like all of these, but I like some better than others. And from my experience with these palettes, the formula does tend to differ from palette to palette. They're really not all created equally, unfortunately, but I still do enjoy these overall, but I just wanted to be a little bit critical of them because it's a very, very expensive brand. I have ranked eyeshadow palettes by other brands as well. I will link my ranking makeup playlist. I've ranked Juvia's Place, BH Cosmetics, Pat McGrath, and ColourPop, and I've also ranked my entire eyeshadow palette collection, so I'll leave that playlist if you do want to see more. I was potentially going to wait to do this video because I did order 2 Natasha Denona palettes on Cyber Monday deals. I didn't get them from her website, but I ordered the Glam and the Bronze palette. I found them about 25% off, so those are not here yet. So maybe I'll redo this video in a couple of months. We shall see, but I really want to test the palettes out thoroughly, so I realized there just was no way I could do that anytime soon. So I do enjoy all of these palettes, but yeah, let's just get into the ranking. Oh, also, if you are interested, I did do a video using all of my Natasha Denona palettes. I randomly picked a shade from each palette to do a look, so I'll link that video if you want to see that. All right, number 8, last place, is the Mini Leela palette. Now, I do enjoy this palette. I will say a lot of people did not like this one at all. It did get some bad reviews formula-wise. Personally, I have no issues with this palette formula-wise. I think it's actually really, really nice. And I'm wearing this blue like right on the inner corner here. This is a gorgeous duochrome. These purples are really, really nice. My issue with this palette is the color selection. I've mentioned it in other videos that these 2 purples are pretty similar to each other on the eyes. You can tell this is more purple, this is more burgundy, but on my eyes, they're not that different. And then I just think it's a little random to have 2 very neutral shades with these 3 purpley colors. So personally, I would not have chosen these 5 colors for a 5-pan palette, but I do like them all and I actually do like the formula, and I know that a lot of people really did not, but personally, formula-wise, I really do like this palette. I am somewhat taking price into consideration with these palettes. These mini palettes are $25 each. Spot number 7 does go to the Mini Nude palette. This one I have used a lot. I have hit pan on it. This was in my project 100 uses. I have used this palette a lot. And this was the first Natasha Denona palette that I purchased. And I really enjoyed it. And I still do like this palette. However, I will say that the formula on this one is not as good as some of her bigger palettes. I actually almost think that the formula on the Mini Leela is a little bit better than this because the fallout on these shimmers, even with a wet brush, is inevitable. It definitely helps and I have to use a wet brush with these, but they still even give some fallout throughout the day, which with the Mini Leela that does not happen. And I will say formula-wise, I really love the Natasha Denona mattes, and I think that they are overall pretty consistent, very easy to blend. They're pigmented, but they're not crazy pigmented. I think they're very smooth and very nice. Her shimmer formulas vary a lot. She does have some duochromes, some metallics, but some are smoother than others, and others I will say are pretty chunky. So that definitely varies from palette to palette. These are a bit on the chunky side and definitely require a wet brush, but I've used this palette so much and I definitely feel like I've gotten my money's worth. And I think if you want to purchase Natasha Denona but you don't want to spend the high price tag, I do think starting out with these mini palettes is a good starting point. She does also have some full-size 5-pan palettes, which are about $50. I don't own any of those, and just for me, if I'm gonna get 5 eyeshadows, I'd rather only pay $25 and get smaller pans because I have a large collection. So buying those $50 5-pan palettes, for me, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. So overall, the Mini Nude, I like it. It was a really great starting point for me to try Natasha Denona at the price point, but overall, I think the bigger palettes have a nicer formula. On to number 6, and that is this. This is one of her 28 pan palettes. These are full price, $239. This is the purple and blue one. And the reason this is being ranked the lowest out of all of the full-size palettes is there are a few dud shades in here for me. Not a lot. I mean, most of them are really, really nice, very smooth formula. Some of them, like this one, a little bit chunky. Definitely you need a wet brush with that one, but some of these blues are really, really smooth and I did not need a wet brush with them. The duds are 3 of the purples. So this one looks gorgeous in the pan, but it's not very pigmented and I've used that one quite a bit. Also, this shimmer is not that pigmented and this one also. I had a really hard time getting those to show up. This purple here is beautiful and so is this one. I love them and I'm wearing a little bit of this on the outer corner today. This is overall a beautiful palette, but now, okay, I will say I purchased this one and the green brown, which you'll see later in the video. She has a bundle for $310 and on Black Friday, I think they were buy one, get one. So you could have gotten both for $239. That I do think is a decent price considering, you know, how expensive they are to begin with. I would have never paid $239 for this. And honestly, the fact that I paid $155 for this palette, I mildly regret that, to be honest, because I just think at that price point, whether you're talking 150 or 240, 3 dud shades, you know, I'm not as okay with that as I am with maybe a $50 or $60 palette. So overall, the shades in here are beautiful. I love that it has some more cool toned blues. This teal is beautiful, the silvers, but it's called the purple and blue palette and 3 of the purples I just could not get to show up very well. So honestly, this palette is a bit of a disappointment. If I knew this going into it, I maybe would have just purchased the green brown one on its own. Spot number 5 is one of the most popular Natasha Denona palettes. That is the gold palette. I do like this palette and I really enjoy it, but the reason it's being ranked a little bit lower is that some of the shades are a bit on the chunky and difficult to work with side. Now, they definitely work with a wet brush, and I really do love this palette overall. When this first came out, I thought, gold eyeshadow, I have so much of that already. I don't need this. But I got it sometime this year after watching a lot of reviews and tutorials with it, and I gotta say, it's more unique than I thought it would be. Because you do get this duochrome here, this beautiful teal. So this one, this one, this one, and this one, those are the ones that I would say are a bit on the chunky side. These here are really smooth shimmer wise. Those don't need a wet brush. So the formula definitely varies within this palette. And I've mentioned this palette before. I did a mini review on it when I got it in another ranking palettes video. My other issue is, I mean, this eyeshadow and this eyeshadow, I mean, they're identical. On the eyes, I cannot tell the difference. And even this one is pretty similar. This one is slightly darker, but I mean, this palette is $129 and I got it, she had a sale earlier this year where I got it for $90, which is still a lot, I know. In a palette that expensive, when you're only working with this many shades, to have 3 colors that similar, it's a huge turnoff for me. I don't like that. And you will see in some of her other palettes, she does tend to dupe herself within her palettes and among the other ones. I don't mind as much when brands have similar shades among all their palettes because not all of us are gonna go and buy all of their palettes, but I just think for how expensive this is, I really wish those 3 browns were not that similar to each other, but overall, I still do love this one. I don't regret getting it at all, I will say. The only one I kind of regret is the purple and blue, but I think it's a fantastic palette. It's definitely more unique than I thought it would be, but it could be improved a little bit in my eyes. Spot number 4 is the Sunrise palette. This is one of her $65 palettes. And personally, I love this smaller size. You get the same amount of eyeshadows as you do in her $129 palettes, But the pans are smaller and I have a lot of eyeshadow. I don't need huge eyeshadow pans. I'm never going to finish them. Now this palette is absolutely beautiful and I did very recently review this in a ranking new eyeshadow palettes video. I've had this one since I think I got it in the beginning of September and I've used it quite a bit. The color selection is gorgeous. I mean, pink, purple, burgundy. I love this color story. I really do. And the majority of what I'm wearing today is this palette with just, as I mentioned, a little bit of that purple from the other one and then the mini Leela, but it's mostly this palette. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous palette. Now I will say the formula on this one isn't quite as good on all of the shades. I just think some of them lack a bit of pigmentation. Like this one is not as pigmented as I'd like. This one that I'm wearing today really had to build that one up. Also, this one is a bit on the sheer side. So I love this palette. I love the color story. Formula-wise, I don't think it's quite as good as a few of the palettes I'm still going to be mentioning in this video, but overall, I really, really do love this one. I'm really glad that I got it. $65 I think is a much better price point, and I'm really excited to be getting the glam and the bronze. But yeah, I just wish she kind of did all of the palettes at this size because I don't need that much more product to be spending, you know, twice as much. So a few shades are not quite as pigmented as I would like, but overall this is a really, really great palette and it's a beautiful color story. I did mention this in another video that mine is really loud and it's been like that ever since I bought it. I did buy it at Sephora and one of you guys told me that yours also squeaks. But I went back and watched some older review videos from when it came out and nobody's palette that I noticed was making such loud noises, but yeah, it's very, very loud. I feel like I should oil the hinges or something, but you know, I don't want to ruin the eyeshadow. So I like this one, I do. A few shades could be more pigmented, but I think it's a gorgeous palette. On to spot number 3, and now this is a palette that is one of her worst reviewed. But personally, I love it. So I guess you'll see I have slightly different opinions that some people do on her palettes because so many people hated it. And that is the Safari palette. And this is an all matte palette. I really love this palette. I love the color selection. She did not dupe herself within any of these colors. I think that some of these are actually pretty unique. I love this kind of orangey color. I love this matte red. This mustard is amazing. This pink is amazing. I really love this palette. I think it is a gorgeous color story. I love that they're all matte. Now, a lot of people didn't like this palette because these, I will say, are a bit more pigmented than the other mattes in her other palettes. So you just kind of have to be careful with them, and over blending them sometimes can be problematic, particularly with like the greens and the blues. But I've used this palette a lot, and this is one of my most used from Natasha Denona that I have purchased. I just love it. Now, I mostly do combine it with other palettes because I do like to wear a shimmer on the lid, but I have done all matte looks with this one, and I think it's great. This is full price. This is $129, but this has been on sale on her website for $65 for a very long time. And that's how I purchased it. I purchased it for $65. The $129, I don't really think for me would have been worth it to get this palette, but for $65, for me, this has been well worth it. And I really, really do love it. So if you are going to get this palette, I would recommend buying it from her site because it's still available on Beautylish, but it's full price on Beautylish, but it's not really available anywhere else that I found. This is no longer being sold at Sephora. So this is one that she marketed as limited edition, although it's still around. I will say some of her palettes are marketed as limited edition, but they've been around a long time. This is one of those. A lot of people didn't like this. I truly, truly love it. And I am kind of basing that on the $65 that I spent for it. Again, I don't think I would have paid the $129, but it's a gorgeous all matte palette. I love the color story and it's great. All right, we are on spot number 2. I have talked about this palette so much on my channel. This was the second Natasha Denona palette that I ever purchased. the Metropolis palette. Now, for a long time, this was my favorite eyeshadow palette in my entire collection, and it's still definitely in the top 5. This is amazing. I did a full review on this when it came out. I did pay the full $129 for this palette. I bought this the day it was released at Sephora, and I have zero regrets about that. You do get more eyeshadows in this one than her other 129 palettes. So it's a 28 pan palette, but it's $129, not $239 like the other 28 pans, because the pans are smaller. I much prefer the smaller pans. I'll keep saying that. I own a lot of eyeshadows, so I don't need more product. I'd rather have a variety of shades. So I was very willing to pay more money for more eyeshadows than like getting the gold palette or the Safari for the full $129. I love this. As you can see, I've hit pan on this one. I have used this one so much. I truly, truly love it. Now, the only reason it's not in first place is that some of the shades, as I mentioned, some of her shimmers, metallics can be a bit chunky. There are a few like that in here. A couple of these golds aren't as smooth as I'd like, but with a wet brush, they work great. And then my only other issue with this palette is that, again, some of the colors dupe themselves, kind of like in the gold palette. Like a lot of these orangey browns, like these two on the eyes, they're pretty similar. You know, some of the other browns, these two, I guess this one is a little bit darker. On the eyes, they don't look that different. And then I will say there are a lot of cream to powder formulas in this one. Not all of her palettes have the cream to powder formula. I like that. And when I got this palette, I think I liked that formula more than I do now. The more I've used it, I'd rather just have a plain matte eyeshadow. They do work well, but I don't know. It just seems a little unnecessary to me. I would rather just have a regular matte eyeshadow. And there's a lot of the cream to powder formula in this palette, but I still use them. I still love them. I think formula-wise, I think her best shades are her just regular mattes, and then also her metallics. That's what I really love. And the duochromes too. I love her duochromes, but the duochromes definitely need a wet brush. But overall, I still love this palette. It is one of my favorites, and I really like the size of the palette that she did at this price point. I don't know why she hasn't released more palettes that are 28 pans at this point. I kind of wish she would do more. It's a great palette. It's one of the most used in my collection, and yeah, this one, no regrets at all. Alrighty, and first place goes to the green and brown palette. This is one of the 28 pans. This one does cost $239. As I mentioned, I paid $155 because I got it in that bundle with the purple and blue. But the thing about this palette is the formula is spectacular. I don't even need to wet my brush for these shimmers. I have done that, but I've also used it without wetting the brush. And honestly, this formula is so smooth. I don't need to do that. The mattes are just as good as all of her other mattes. I love the greens in here. I love these bronzy shades, are so beautiful. I will say she does have a lot of bronze eyeshadows and gold eyeshadows within her palettes. I'm actually thinking about getting rid of the mini nude at some point because the shimmers in here can definitely be duped with this one, but the formula is better on this one than with this one. So that may be one that I do get rid of at some point. But yeah, this formula is spectacular. There's not a dud in here. The only negative thing I could say is that a few of the shades, again, are a little similar. For example, like these three bronzes right there. On the eyes, they're not that different. And then the only other thing, I guess I do wish there were maybe one or two more matte eyeshadows. As you can tell, it's mostly a metallic palette. There's a few mattes here, here, and here, but I feel like the only thing it's truly missing would have been a matte green. I think that would have been a really, really nice addition. There is a matte teal green in the purple and blue palette, which I have combined with this palette, and that works very, very well. But I think that could have made this palette just perfect, 10 out of 10. Now, Would I have spent the $239? I mean, no, because I had wanted this palette for 5 years and I never pulled the trigger and got it until I finally decided to save up for that bundle and get both. I guess I go a little bit back and forth on whether me getting the bundle ended up really being worth it for me, since I don't love the other one as much. I do like it, I really do, but this is just so much better. I mean, formula wise, this palette, it really is its perfection. I have also done a separate get ready with me using this one, and also I have a few get ready with me's using the Metropolis and also one with Safari. I'll link those in the description box if you want to see that, because I've used these palettes so much. But yeah, this one, it is amazing. She does tend to have amazing Black Friday sales, which that is already over. But she had a lot of website issues and I didn't order anything because the palettes I wanted weren't even on sale. As I mentioned, I got the Glam and the Bronze, but she did have that buy one, get one with these 28 pan palettes, which if I hadn't gotten the bundle, I think that would have been the way to go, honestly. But yeah, I love it. It's amazing. Wish there was a matte green, but other than that, this is pretty much a perfect palette. Alrighty, that is it for this ranking. Overall, I would say I actually do love all of these palettes. I think that the mini ones, formula-wise, are not quite as good as the larger ones, but I do think that they're a great starting point, and they're still really good palettes. And $25 is a much better price, even though the pans are smaller than her larger palettes. So I definitely don't regret getting those, and I think for me, starting out with one of her mini palettes was really the good thing to do, because when I purchased that, I really had not purchased much luxury makeup at that point. And I think it's a great way to first start the brand. And I really do love the larger ones. The purple and blue one, considering how expensive it is, I'm not sure that one was fully worth it. It's still a great palette though. It really, really is. But I would say the rest, the Safari, the green and the brown, the Sunrise, the gold, Metropolis, I love those the most. Those are fantastic, amazing eyeshadow palettes. You know, I don't regret getting them at all. Please let us know your favorite Natasha Denona palette. I'm very excited to be getting the Glam and the Bronze. I really look forward to that, and I do like that $65 price point more. So please let us know your favorites. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.